Johnson, there's blood. The voice in his earpiece crackled, but he didn't need confirmation. His partner, Kaylee, the German shepherd, had already gone rigid, nose buried in the snow, barking in short, urgent bursts. "Easy, girl. Show me," he murmured, kneeling beside her. The frozen crust cracked beneath his gloves as he brushed away the white layer. Something metallic glinted, a dog tag. Then a hand, pale, trembling, barely human in the freezing light. "I got a live one," he shouted, and the radio hissed back static. The man in the snow gasped weakly, his lips blue, his eyes glassy, but still holding that stubborn flame soldiers carried even when death was sitting on their shoulders. "Name's Maxon Hale, U.S. Marine," he wheezed. Johnson leaned closer, pressing his hand against the man's shoulder. "You're gonna be fine, soldier. We've got you." But Maxon shook his head, blood bubbling on his cracked lips. "No time, they're building something here, under the ridge." His fingers clenched tighter around a crumpled, frostbitten envelope. "Take it. Tell them. Raven. Project." Then his hand went limp. For a heartbeat, all that existed was the hollow wind whispering across the frozen pines and the faint whimper from Kaylee. Johnson tore open the envelope. Inside was a small folded sheet, smudged diagrams, coordinates, and a single line scrawled in trembling ink. "They're arming for war." His pulse quickened. "Dispatch. This is Deputy Ethan Johnson. We have a casualty. Possible classified intel. Request immediate evac at Frostpine Sector C9. The line crackled again. "Copy that, Johnson, but storm's closing in. You're on your own for at least an hour." He exhaled sharply. "Roger that." Kaylee pawed at Maxon's uniform, whining. "Yeah, I know, girl." He didn't make it. The words felt heavier than the air he breathed. Johnson lifted his gaze toward the dense tree line ahead. Something about the silence felt wrong. Not the natural kind of silence, but the kind that comes after someone has already seen you and is waiting for you to move. He slung his rifle off his back, checked the chamber, and whispered, "Stay close, Kaylee." The dog crouched low, eyes sharp, breath visible in the cold. Then came a faint hum, a low, mechanical sound buried beneath the howling wind. He froze, listening. "Generators," he muttered. "There's power out here." Following the sound, Johnson moved between snow-laden firs, his boots crunching softly. Every step was a decision between curiosity and survival. The air smelled faintly of oil and gunpowder. Kaylee's nose lifted, tail rigid. "You smell it too, don't you?" he whispered. They reached a shallow ravine. Down below, beneath a jagged slope of ice, was a flicker of light, artificial, orange, pulsing like a heartbeat. Johnson crouched behind a fallen log, binoculars up. A group of men in black winter gear were unloading crates from a camouflage truck. No markings, no insignia. One of them opened a container, and the brief flash of what was inside made Johnson's breath hitch. Stacks of rifles, grenades, and heavy components that looked military-grade. "Jesus," he whispered. Then Kaylee growled low. One of the men had turned, scanning the forest with a flashlight. The beam cut dangerously close. "Down," Johnson hissed, pressing Kaylee gently into the snow. The beam lingered, then moved on. Johnson let out a slow breath. "All right, girl, we got what we need. Let's get out before—" A sudden crack echoed through the forest. A tree splintered beside him. Sniper fire. "Move," he yelled, sprinting through the snow as bullets hissed around them. Kaylee darted beside him, fast and silent. They slid behind a ridge, heartbeats sinking with the storm that had begun to howl. "They know we're here," he muttered, That means the letter's real. He pulled out the folded paper again, staring at the trembling ink under the dim light. Raven Project. The words burned into his mind like a warning. Kaylee nudged his arm, ears perked toward the distant rumble of approaching engines. "Yeah," Johnson said softly, his voice edged with both fear and resolve. "We're not just dealing with smugglers, girl. This is something bigger." Snow began to fall heavier now, coating Maxon's still body in silence. Johnson gave one last look at the fallen Marine, then turned toward the darkness. "You didn't die for nothing, soldier," he whispered. "We'll finish what you started." He whistled once, and Kaylee moved beside him, loyal and unflinching. Together, they disappeared into the white storm, carrying with them the spark of a secret that could ignite a war. "Ethan, you can't just walk into a military command post waving a bloody letter." Sarah Blake's voice cut through the static as she slammed the passenger door of the SUV. Her breath came out in sharp clouds as the heater struggled against the cold. "They'll laugh you out before you finish saying, 'Raven Project.'" Johnson didn't look at her. His hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, eyes fixed on the road ahead. "Maxon Hale didn't die for nothing, Sarah. That letter, those coordinates, it's real. I saw men moving weapons out there. Men in black parkas in the middle of a snowstorm," she counted. "Could have been smugglers, private security, even a government op you weren't cleared for." Johnson's tone hardened. "Then why the hell did they try to shoot me?" Silence fell for a beat. Kaylee barked softly from the back seat, as if agreeing with her handler. Sarah sighed. "You said the name Raven Project. You realize what that means?" "Yeah," Johnson replied, voice low. "A black-budget operation. Off the books. No insignia, no accountability, and no witnesses," Sarah added grimly. The SUV bounced over a patch of frozen dirt before pulling into an abandoned ranger station. Johnson killed the engine, the silence almost ringing. He unfolded the crumpled letter on the dashboard. The ink was smeared, but legible. A sketch of a compound under the ridge, tunnels, generator lines, and something that looked like a runway carved into the ice. "They're building something they don't want the world to see," he murmured. "Something that requires heavy armament, fuel, and absolute secrecy." Sarah leaned closer, her expression tightening. "Ethan, those coordinates, they're near an old Cold War bunker, officially decommissioned, but if someone reactivated it..." "It's no longer just a rumor," Johnson finished. He reached for the radio. "Dispatch, this is Deputy Johnson, requesting confirmation on any registered activity within Grid F9, Frostpine Ridge." A pause, then, "Negative, Deputy. No activity recorded. That sector's been restricted for years." He clicked off the radio and muttered, "Exactly." Sarah rubbed her temples. "So what's the plan?" "March into restricted territory with a police badge and a dog." Johnson looked back at Kaylee, who stared at him with unblinking focus. "That's exactly the plan." "You're insane." "Probably. But if we don't act now, the next time someone hears about Frostpine Ridge, it'll be after something explodes." They geared up quickly, body cams, extra mags, flares, and the one thermal scanner left from Johnson's SWAT days. The snowstorm had quieted, leaving behind an eerie calm. When they stepped outside, the cold bit like a blade. "You sure about this?" Sarah asked. "Not even close," Johnson said, loading his rifle. "But the truth doesn't care if I'm ready." Hours later, deep in the forest, the beam of their flashlights cut through the mist. Kaylee stopped abruptly, nose in the air, tail stiff. Johnson crouched. "What is it, girl?" She barked once, sharp, then bolted ahead. Kaylee, wait. They followed her through a narrow path, branches snapping underfoot. Then Johnson saw it, fresh tire tracks, half buried by snow, leading toward a slope of frozen rock. The hum was back, faint but steady, like a heartbeat beneath the ground. Sarah pointed to a patch of disturbed snow near the tracks. Ethan, that's human blood. He knelt, touched it, still warm. They're close, he whispered. Too close. A shout echoed in the distance, foreign accent, coarse and commanding. Johnson motioned to Sarah. They moved silently toward the source. Below, in a clearing lit by portable floodlights, men were unloading more crates. Kaylee crouched low beside Johnson, ears twitching. Same uniforms as before, he muttered. Same insignia, none. Sarah zoomed her binoculars. Wait. That man, he's not one of them. At the edge of the clearing, a man in a military coat was tied to a pole, gagged, trembling. Johnson's gut twisted. Another Marine. He tightened his grip on the rifle. We're not leaving him. Sarah hissed. Are you out of your mind? There are at least 10 of them. Then we'll have to be faster. As he spoke, one of the guards raised his radio. Johnson didn't hesitate. He fired. The man dropped before the echo faded. Chaos erupted. Move, Sarah shouted. They sprinted downhill, bullets ripping through the snow. Kaylee darted ahead, tackling one of the men to the ground, teeth flashing. Johnson covered her flank, grabbing the captive's ropes. We're getting you out, he growled. The man's eyes widened in terror. No, you don't understand, he choked. It's not just weapons. They're building a grenade went off, cutting him short. The shockwave threw them backward. When the smoke cleared, Johnson lay in the snow, ears ringing. Sarah crawled to him, coughing. What the hell are they building? Johnson stared toward the burning crates. Something that doesn't want to be found. He lifted the charred remains of the letter. Half of it gone, but one word. Ethan, stop. There's movement down there. Sarah's voice was a sharp whisper as they crouched behind a mound of snow. The burned remains of the crates still smoked in the clearing below. The storm had passed, leaving the forest drenched in a heavy, unnatural quiet. Johnson lowered his rifle, eyes narrowing through the thermal scope. 3 of them, no, 4. They're pulling the rest of the weapons into that tunnel entrance. He could see it now, an iron hatch, half hidden beneath collapsed ice, its edges rimmed with frost and scorch marks. That's no supply bunker, he muttered. It's an access point. Sarah frowned. Access to what? Johnson adjusted the focus and saw the faint glow of industrial lights flickering deep below. Something big, something alive, Kaylee's low growl rumbled beside them. Johnson whispered, Quiet, girl. He tapped Sarah's shoulder. We move in silent. You cover left, I'll take the right. We need proof before command believes a word of this, Ethan. You're not thinking straight. Sarah hissed. You were almost killed. We need to call it in. He looked at her, eyes cold. And tell who? The same brass funding this ghost operation? Number. We go down there. Now they slid down the ridge, each step sinking into the crusted snow. The closer they got, the louder the hum became, steady, mechanical, pulsing like a distant heart. At the entrance, Johnson knelt, brushing aside debris to reveal a control panel buried in ice. This isn't military grade, it's corporate tech. He plugged a power cable from his field kit, sparks flickered, and the panel came to life. A biometric scanner blinked red. Damn it. Sarah pulled a thin wire from her sleeve. Let me try. Within seconds, the lock clicked open. The hatch hissed, exhaling a cloud of steam. A metal stairway spiraled into darkness. Johnson looked down and said softly, "If I don't make it back—" "Shut up and move," Sarah cut him off. "We're doing this together." Inside, the air was heavy with the smell of oil and ozone. The walls glistened with condensation, pipes running like veins through the steel corridors. Kaylee padded ahead, her claws clicking lightly against the floor. Every few steps she stopped, sniffing, tense. "Something's been living down here," Johnson whispered. "Not just soldiers." As they turned a corner, light spilled from an open chamber. They froze. Below them was a cavernous room filled with machinery, rows of missile pods, fuel tanks, and a suspended platform with what looked like a prototype aircraft, sleek and black, humming faintly with power. "Holy hell," Sarah breathed. "They're building a drone launcher. Or worse." Johnson's eyes locked on a banner pinned to the far wall. Raven Industries. "It's not military. It's private." He raised his camera, snapped a few shots. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the speakers. "Deputy Ethan Johnson, you've seen too much." Sarah's blood ran cold. "They're watching us." The lights flickered, then blazed white. Doors sealed with a hiss. Johnson spun around. "Kaylee, find an exit." The dog bolted toward a ventilation shaft, barking frantically. "Come on," he shouted. They sprinted through the corridor as alarms wailed. Red lights painting the metal walls like blood. A robotic voice announced, "Containment breach. Activate purge protocol." Sarah stumbled as the floor trembled. "They're sealing the tunnels." Johnson grabbed her arm. "Not if we move faster." Ahead, steam erupted from a ruptured pipe. Kaylee leapt through first, then Johnson pulled Sarah behind him. They emerged into another chamber, this one smaller, lined with computers. On one screen, a live feed showed a map of the Frostpine region, overlaid with target coordinates. "They're not just building weapons," Johnson said breathlessly. "They're preparing strikes." Sarah's hands flew across the keyboard. "I can copy the data. Hold them off." Footsteps echoed behind them. Heavy boots. Johnson turned, fired 2 quick shots, dropping the first guard. "Hurry, Sarah," he shouted. "Almost there. Got it." She yanked a drive from the console. "Let's go." They dashed back through the corridor, chased by shouts and gunfire. A blast shook the ceiling. Johnson spotted the exit ladder ahead. "Kaylee, up." The dog scrambled first, barking wildly at the daylight seeping through the top hatch. Sarah climbed next. Johnson was halfway up when a hand grabbed his boot. He kicked back hard, heard a scream, then a gunshot. The bullet grazed his shoulder, but he kept climbing, adrenaline flooding his veins. They burst out into the snow, gasping, collapsing beside the hatch as it sealed shut beneath them. Sarah looked at the drive in her hand, trembling. "Ethan, what the hell did we just see?" He stared into the distance, where the horizon burned faintly orange. "Proof," he said quietly, "and a war no one's ready for." Kaylee whined softly, resting her head on his arm. Johnson placed a hand on her fur. "We're not done, girl." "Not yet." "Hand it over, deputy." "Nice and slow," the voice boomed from the loudspeaker as floodlights snapped on, bleaching the snowfield around the ranger station to a surgical white, and Ethan Johnson didn't even turn toward the light. He kept his gaze on Sarah Blake, and the small data drive clenched in her fist. "Sarah, do not move," he said calmly. "They want us to flinch." "Oh, I'm past flinching," she whispered, eyes darting, counting silhouettes on the tree line. Kaylee's ears flattened, a low growl building in her chest. "One wrong move, and the dog dies first." The voice added pleasantly, too pleasantly, and Ethan lifted his hands, slowly, letting the rifle dangle from its sling. You've got the wrong idea, he called back. We're law enforcement, and this belongs to the US government now. A chuckle crackled through the speaker. Raven Industries is the government you actually deal with, Deputy. Our contract outranks your badge. Then come show me the paperwork, Ethan replied. Sarah hissed, Ethan, we're boxed in. He smiled without humor. Only if we stay still. He lifted his chin. Kaylee, brace. The shepherd slid to his left flank, muscles coiled. Floodlights shifted. 10 men in white winter gear rose from behind snow berms, rifles leveled. A black transport crept into view, armored and wide like a coffin on tracks. The loudspeaker, You found our launch pad. That was expected. What wasn't was your little carelessness in the bunker. You triggered a breadcrumb countermeasure. Sarah's breath hitched. They tracked the copy. Ethan kept his voice even. So, come take it. He stepped forward, boots crunching. But you and I both know that Drive is mirrored. Kill us, and it uploads to every newsroom from here to DCA Beat. Then, another soft laugh. You're bluffing. Am I? Ethan asked, letting the cold bite into his wounded shoulder until the pain sharpened his focus. He tilted his head toward the ranger station's radio mast, its blinking red diode an accusation against the white sky. Signal went out 10 minutes ago. Sarah's eyes flashed at him, half question, half trust, and she squeezed the drive tighter. The loudspeaker sighed. Then we pivot to containment. Bring them in. The transport's side doors slid open. Flashbangs arced through the air. Down, Ethan shouted, diving and throwing an arm over Kaylee as the world went white. Sound shattered into tin. Shapes rushed. He fired blind, felt a body thud. Sarah rolled, put 2 rounds into a shadow sprinting for the drive. Move, she barked, and they sprinted for the tree line as bullets chewed up the snow at their heels. Left! Creek bed, Ethan yelled. They slid down a slick bank, water black and fast under a skin of ice. We can't cross, Sarah panted. We don't, Ethan said, pulling a flare from his vest and striking it to angry life. Smoke screen. He tossed it upstream. Fog bloomed, red and seething. Kaylee, track, home. The dog lunged ahead, veering into a narrow cut between pines that only something 4-legged or desperate would notice. They plunged through, branches whipping, boots stumbling over roots hidden by powder. Behind them, radio chatter turned urgent. They're flanking, Sarah said. We need height. Tower, Ethan said, pointing to a fire watch platform skeletal against the pale horizon. Go. They climbed the ladder, 2 rungs at a time. Halfway up, a round smacked the metal beside Ethan's hand, sparks spraying. Keep going, he shouted. Kaylee bounded up the grated steps like a whisper. They hauled themselves onto the platform, wind tearing at them, forest laid out like a chessboard of dark lines and white squares. We hold here, Sarah asked, breath ragged. Ethan ripped open a metal emergency box, fingers closing around a rusted signal horn, a coil of wire, a flare pistol. We don't hold, he said. We make them trip. He looped wire around the ladder's middle rungs, anchoring it to a broken winch. Tripwire? Sarah blinked. Trip everything? He set the flare pistol at the edge, aimed at a fuel cache he'd clocked minutes earlier near the transport. Barrels huddled like penguins, sloppily tarped. On my mark, he said. You lure them to the ladder. I light their toes on fire. Classic you, she muttered, then raised her voice. Hey, corporate soldiers, want your toy back? Come take it. She held the drive up just enough for the lights below to sparkle off its edge. Shouts, footfalls. 4 men broke from cover, sweeping toward the base of the tower. Closer, Ethan whispered. Come on. The first man gripped the ladder and climbed. The wire sang. The tower bucked, old intakes rattling as the winch spun and the ladder snapped free mid-span, swinging like a guillotine and dumping two men into the snow. Now, Ethan breathed and fired the flare. It screamed across the clearing and punched the tarp. For a breath, nothing happened. Then heat found vapor, vapor found fuel, and the cache bloomed into a rolling orange flower that shoved the night backward. The